Testing, testing.
Yeah, we're running with quite a delay. Just not
Good afternoon. My name is Blaine Helwig, and welcome to our Sunday afternoon webinar on a rapid academic turnaround of Title I schools. This is a little different setting. Usually I present in front of folks that, face-to-face we can see, and we have a lot more interactive dialogue. The webinars, of course, allow dialogue. The only difference is that I'm going to use a PowerPoint today, which means, of course, that I'm not going to be able to, I'd have to toggle back and forth between the screen that you're seeing and what I'm seeing. So we'll talk a little bit about how we'll handle questions to make sure we respect everyone's time. But I like to use a PowerPoint so that, the presentation is very pointed and it stays on course and you lack any kind of discursive tangential points. So again, welcome to our afternoon Sunday webinar on the academic turnaround of Title I schools. And we're going to begin the PowerPoint at this time. So you'll be seeing a PowerPoint come up in just a second. So my name is Blaine Helwig. I've just recently retired as a principal of J. Walter Graham Elementary in the Austin Independent School District in Austin, Texas. And I'd like to begin today with a simple quote here by Bruce Lee. It's not a daily increase, but a daily decrease. Hack away at your unessentials. What we see in our schools all too often is the fact that we have so many irons in the fire and so many things running that we get away from sometimes the things that are the most important. So if we're going to be successful in our schools, we're going to have to, allot and spend time on what makes a difference, because we already know that the folks are working hard in the schools. They just need to make sure that we focus on the things that are really giving us efficacy and results and matter. Okay. Before I begin, I'd like to talk about a couple qualifying belief statements and then kind of set the tone for what we're going to be talking about today. So, educational equity, it's just the key to economic equity for low-income students. If we do not give these kiddos, a solid, fundamental, productive public education, the economic equity cannot follow, because they're unable to go to university and follow the same path as their more affluent peers. The other is on testing validity. And now, we're talking about folks all over the United States. I'm in Texas when we use the STAR testing, the state of Texas academic readiness standards. But the fact is that Common Core and STAR they're basically the same things. If you look at the two standards, they're almost matched item by item. But the important thing here is that we found, regardless of who we talk to, that these grade level tests are highly correlated with grade level skills. So when kiddos are doing well on grade level assessments, standardized assessments, regardless of the state, they're on grade level. The other we come up is, and just educators in general, we're perpetuating the inequity in our schools. But a lot of folks, and it's happened, unfortunately, that they tend to blame external factors for the failure, and we don't get reflective and start looking at our own practices. So we want to talk a little bit today of what kind of practices really make a difference in bringing around a school and raising academic equity and student achievement. However, the approach to the Title I schools, it really needs to be done with a skill gap approach, rather than people talking about achievement gap philosophies. It's just skill gaps or something, or an item that can be readily available, readily dealt with. And as soon as we deal with those skill gaps, as you've seen we've done with some of our schools with just incredible success follows. Like everything else in the world, it's going to take diligent and consistent work to turn around these schools. We focus on student skills and effective instruction with these resources, stopgap resources, which I'll explain a little bit more as time goes on. But above all, hard work is always necessary, but with efficacy on things that matter again. So if they're going to talk about school reforms, you're always going to break those down into three basic areas. And it's going to be school systems, the resources that we're using, and then personnel. It's those three areas that we can always break down a school's essentially turnaround efforts. So these are some basic qualifying belief statements I like to start with to kind of set the tone and get a common ground of what we're going to be talking about. So again, to stay on point, I always use a table of contents, and we have a number of folks that have joined us today, and some of those folks have seen me present live, and I always use a table of contents so that, again, that we stay on point. So we're going to talk today a little bit about the introduction, the purpose of the presentation. Then the section B will be a general academic program design, just a general design of how we're looking at schools. And then we get back to our 3 areas. We talk about systems, effective systems, school-wide and classroom. And then we talk about resources, stopgap, language arts, phonics, numeracy, and accelerated reader. And then again, we just briefly touch on the fact of instructional resources that promote a rigor that effectively grade level rigor prepares our children for the test. And lastly, we'll talk about personnel. So these are the issues we're talking about today. And then, of course, we want to see what kind of results or what kind of bang for the buck we're getting out of these particular kind of resources. And then we're going to have a little Q&A time at the end. All right. While I talk about the Q&A time here, again, I want to stay on point. So what we'll do here is please submit your questions, and then at the end we'll address those questions, and that way that we can flow through the presentation, respect everyone's time, and then we'll answer those questions in turn at the very, very end of the presentation. I really look forward to having a productive talk today. All right, school recognitions and the purpose of the presentation. I'd like to talk first about 2 different systems. One, Betty Jenkins, who ran Blackshear Elementary, just was promoted to an executive director position within the Austin Independent School District. She ran these same systems, and you can see starting in 2013, TEA means Texas Education Agency, earned earned 3 out of 3 academic distinctions in 2013 to 14. TEA Title I's Rewards School, and 2014 through 16, she was a gold ribbon school. That's by a Houston-based nonprofit looking at Title I performance of just high academics. And again, she 2014 a TEA 6 out of 6 distinctions, and then capped it off with the National Blue Ribbon School in 2015, one of 25 schools selected in the state of Texas. And then that school was also chosen for a National Blue Ribbon Profile School by the U.S. Department of Education, one of 4 schools in the country chosen for academic excellence. And then in 2015 and 16, you can see they've earned 4 out of 5 academic distinctions, and then 5 out of 6 in 2016. I ran Graham Elementary from 2007-8 until 2016. Just a couple months ago, I retired. And we were using these systems. You can see that we were TEA, Texas Education Agency, exemplary rated school. 2012, we were awarded the National Blue Ribbon. Again, we were also awarded a National Blue Ribbon Profile School, one of 4 schools in the country to be honored by the U.S. Department of Education on their website for academic excellence. And you can see the other awards here. 3 out of 3 distinctions. Gold Ribbon School, TEA Title I Rewards School. And then we have earned every academic distinction available from 2013 when the Texas Education Agency changed their system from an exemplary rated to a recognized to an acceptable, unacceptable rating to the academic distinctions. But we're the only school that I'm aware of in the state of Texas that's been able to do this since 2009, all the way to 2016, earn every possible award by TEA that's possible. Now, if you look at these 2 schools, what's interesting is that they're urban Title I schools, and they have 89% economically disadvantaged students, but they've all dropped from higher EcoDis ratings of 96%, because when the schools start to turn around, you start to see affluent minority and Anglo students returning to their neighborhood schools. And the other aspect that really makes these schools interesting is that they have between 55% and 60% LEP, limited English proficiency, which means the students do not speak English at home. It's not a home language, so that most of our students here speak Spanish at home. And then they have high mobility rates. The commonality between the two schools, they're using the exact same basic systems and resources we're going to discuss today. So a little bit on school recognition, the purpose of presentation. Now let's talk about the overall purpose. Today we're just sharing academic formula for success, so that as well as the medium and the high SES schools that have struggling kiddos, they can use the same effective strategies to turn these kiddos and give them an educational equity within their structures. But we're talking about academically fixing the school. So but first, you must actually fix the academic programs and bring the school up. And then you should add on, in my opinion, the fine arts and technological applications after the high academics are established. And the reason that you want to do that is it just presents too many irons again in the fire, where we're not really establishing good basic core fundamentals. And then if we add on so many programs, we end up having issues. And again, A lot of the schools try to be all things to all people, and I do understand that. But the fact is that when we're having less than half of our kids or 50% of our kids unable to pass a grade level reading test or a grade level math test, we really need to fix those areas first. Technology is a huge tool, no doubt about it. But it must be a tool in our academic systems. You have to be able to use the technology to heighten student results. But it's only a message, and it can't be the message. Only a medium to yield high success. Okay, back to this. We're at time limit today. We're about an hour, 55 minutes. We're going to deal with the three components, as I mentioned earlier: systems, resources, and personnel. The major emphasis will be on stopgap resources that will change these schools and share the success that we've had, and hopefully that you'll be able to use the same the same methodologies to produce similar results and do right by your kiddos in your school. At the end of the presentation, we'll give an email that you can email, and we'll send you some the three stopgap resources programs that we're using for free, the literacy resources. And then also, if you're in Texas, we have some science prep resources that are very, very helpful when working with the particular population. All right, so we've covered the introduction, purpose, and presentation. Let's go to section B, which is the general academic program design of schools. Now, again, the misconception that you find, and I do a lot of consulting, I own a lot of schools, and that folks believe that that there's a belief system out there that you can start with fine arts and choir and murals and gardens and dance and drive academic success. Now, there's no doubt that that will promote high interest, but the academics, I have found in my experience, if you're going to really turn around schools, you got to deal with that issue head on. So what works are strong foundational programs in reading, math, and writing. Once these are firmly established, you can open the doors. You've seen we've been able to do it, Graham and Blackshear and other schools, so that the fact is we add those particular elements on in various means where the kiddos get a really good complete education. Basically, there's going to be five main stopgap academic programs we're talking about. And what I mean by stopgap, that's a term that's kind of bandied around a little bit. So let me explain that. Stopgap means the fact that we have an achievement gap, but we have got to stop that gap. And once that gap stops, we use our stopgap resources, and it closes that gap to have, essentially no academic achievement. There's no academic achievement gap between a Title I school and a non-Title I school. And remarkably, last year, the Susan and Michael Dell Foundation ran a survey of the 10 largest of 10 large urban academics, and both Graham Elementary and Blackshear Elementary, the two schools I mentioned earlier, had zero achievement gap between their more affluent peers. So our programs have shown a high degree of efficacy, a high degree of success. I'd like to give a little talk on those that we're going to do today, and then we'll move forward. So I want to make one point here about the stopgap resources. The literacy and the non-negotiable word program, which I'll be able to give you today as far as an email, we'll be able to get those out to you, and you can take a look at those and see how they'll fit into your systems if you're interested. And the numeracy stop programs, they're all designed for third grade success from the primary grades. So those kiddos who have finally reached third grade with these particular programs, they get up to speed. We're able to make sure they're on grade level, and then fourth and fifth is very, very easy because you're dealing with kiddos that transition into those last two intermediate grades in elementary school on grade level. So all curriculum, and this is a fact that goes across, doesn't matter what curriculum you're talking about when you're adopting a curriculum for your district, it's designed for grade level, period, across the board. Never a doubt in that. But the kiddos, they haven't always mastered the grade levels and prerequisites coming in. So that's always the problem, because we know that when we see that in our schools. Anybody who's worked in a Title I school sees massive number of kiddos coming in without the background knowledge, without the background skill sets that are required. So you'll see a third grader come in with first grade reading skills, for example. So I try to explain this with a joke analogy. Now I'm going to tell a joke. Not really, but that's my analogy. I'm going to tell a joke. Now this is a funny joke. That's the premise. This is a funny joke. So whoever hears this joke, regardless of race, regardless of gender, regardless of where you're from, regardless of your education, regardless of anything that's any factor, it's independent of those, it's a funny joke. So I get up and I tell my joke, and the premise is this is a funny joke, as I just described. The joke's out there, but only 60% of the people laugh. But that doesn't make any sense, because the premise of this joke is that it's funny, regardless of all those factors. So we should have had 100% of the folks laughing, but they're not. And the reason that last 40% is not laughing is they don't have the background knowledge to understand why that joke is funny. And this is what we're seeing in the schools. A teacher gets up in front of the classroom, they start to tell their instructional, in this case, joke, and they've got 40 to up to 50% of the kids that aren't along with them, that aren't getting the joke because they don't have that background knowledge. Hence, we need a stopgap process to be able to get those kiddos back up to speed, to get the joke so that they're on with the teacher and that they can engage and interact in the lesson effectively. So the big thing with the stopgaps is that, and the success of the schools we've worked with, is that these programs are essentially changing a Title I school into a high SES school as far as the academics. That's what the stopgap does, brings those kiddos back to grade level so that all kiddos can get the joke. So let's talk a little bit about that. General academic program design must include the following elements to be successful. Okay, and I've listed these out. Teacher experience and turnover. Okay, we're going to get this, but the program must be able, the stopgap resource must be able to be run by any teacher of any experience level. They've got to run it effectively. And education as a field the education field is a very, very unique field. There is very few fields like this. I come from both the engineering and the business community, the finance and accounting, and I've also have background in education. We have entry-level work in engineering. We have entry-level work in finance and accounting. There is entry-level work associated with that. But that is not necessarily true in education. In education, we have 2 third-grade teachers, one who's a brand new teacher, 22 years old, fresh out of school, and we have a 20-year veteran, seasoned teacher right next to her, and both are given the exact same assignments. That is not true in the other fields. We have entry-level work where we slowly build those folks up, but we throw our teachers right into the waters with the sharks and expect them to produce. So if you're going to look at academic program design, your resource must not be personnel dependent, where the fact is your teacher doesn't have the experience to be able to be effective with it and run it. So it has to be a simple design. It cannot be complicated. The percent of entry-level teachers, 1 to 5 years, is way, way too high in our schools. And that is one of the reasons we're starting to see, and we've seen problems for the last 50 years. That's one of the reasons we constantly see problems is our teachers are unable to run these programs. Again, we have a lot of new teachers. We're going to have normal turnover. So our stopgap resources that we're using to get these kiddos back up to speed, to understand the joke, they have to be able to rapidly adapt back in there, because we're going to get a lot of new teachers. And when you see the results from both Graham and Blackshear here, you're going to see that we have sustained results because our programs, these stopgap resources, are being able to be effective with entry-level teachers that come back in and start teaching into our schools. They got to be both effective and efficient. So they got to not take up a lot of resource and allocation time, and they got to work. And above all, they must address and pinpoint and hit that student need to make that rectifying action, that corrective action to get the kiddo up. Number 5, rapid results. There's a whole binge of data out there that says that it's a 3 to 5 year turnaround on these schools. Way too long. This is America. No one's waiting that long. You got to be able to turn these schools around in a hurry so that folks are with you and that they stay with you. If it takes 5 years to turn a school around, you're going to have such turnover with your staff that you're not going to be able to do that, because there's just too many people to keep retraining, and too many times that you have issues over and over of trying to support teachers. So you've got to be able to demonstrate rapid results, which we'll be able to talk about very, very quickly on how to do that. Scalability. We have schools of all different enrollment sizes. So we have to have the programs be able to work regardless of the enrollment size. Blackshear has around 350 kids. Graham got up to 950 kids. The 2 schools I mentioned earlier, the programs have to be effective regardless of the size of the enrollment. Again, it can't compete with other programs. When you put a program in place, it cannot compete with another program. And I use the analogy of hot dogs and hamburgers. So every time the fall carnival comes around at Graham Elementary, you would see the PTA get together, and at the carnival, they wanted to sell both hot dogs and hamburgers. And you'd have to say, no, just sell just hot dogs. Because what happens if you sell both hot dogs and hamburgers at the same carnival is that you have two products competing with each other at the same carnival, and you don't make as much money that you're going to put it back into the school. The same thing is true with programs. Two programs that you put in place cannot compete with one another in the sense that they start taking away from the time and the implementation of another. So let's take a graphical look at what this looks at for let's take a graphical look at what this appears to be for program design in our schools. What we have here, and I'm going to explain the graph, is a high SES, socioeconomic status school. And what you got is background knowledge. And if you look above the background knowledge, those are the kiddos that come into school. This could be a classroom, it could be a school, it could be the entire state or the entire country. Those massive number of kids above the line come into school, ready for school because they have the background knowledge, and they proceed grade from kindergarten all the way up to high school, always with the background knowledge. They're always successful in the school. So when the teacher is up telling her analogous joke on curriculum, all kids are getting the joke because they have the background knowledge. The very few kids below the line don't have those prerequisite skills coming in. The parents have the ability to, they have financial resources, and they can navigate the system pretty well. They can get tutoring help, and they can have brothers and sisters help them out that are highly educated, and the parents can help them out a lot more than what we find in our Title I schools. But this is generally what you see when you see a high SES school, lots of kids above. So you can take a teacher of any sort, throw them into a high SES school, and they're successful because the kids are ready for the lessons. They have the background knowledge. They're all getting the joke. This is what our low SES, our Title I schools look like. The exact mirror opposite, and doesn't take much explanation here because we're all familiar with it. We've got just a few kids that are coming in, you can see on the top there, and they're coming into the school, into the grades that are above that background knowledge line. And those kiddos are ready for the lesson. And you have this massive hunk of kids that are beneath that line that never get the joke, and the curriculum seems non sequitur to them. So they are always trying to go A, B, D, E, G, and try to fill in those gaps to get it. So this is what we have. But our academic program design with our stopgap resources, we want to change this. We want to change this picture that is currently in place and make a low SES school emulate a high SES school so that our programs work, all the curriculum works for the grade level just as it does in those schools. So what we try to do, as you can see it, try to flip this around with using our stopgap resources. Slowly flip it around. Background knowledge here, we have a high SES school and we have a low SES school, exactly like a high SES school. This is the approach using these stopgap resources that both Graham Elementary and Blackshear Fine Arts have been using to be able to produce unparalleled results, not just in the central Texas area, not just in Texas, but nationally, that we've been able to have kiddos produce and schools produce at the same levels as their high affluent peers by using this particular model. Now, I want to point out a couple things. These kiddos down here, at least with our Title I funds, we've purchased extra specialists. So we get about 2 or 3 extra specialists using our Title I funds that we get to the schools to purchase extra teachers. They work with these kiddos and they pull these kiddos out to bring them above the line to make sure that they're also, getting the joke, moving along, being on grade level. And you will see what the results in a little bit, which are extremely important because you want to make sure the system's producing. We're highly effective, but our numbers have cut down, as you can see. Now, again, the high SES parents, they have the money to go out and provide tutors. We use our specialists in this way to push them over the line so all kids are getting a good opportunity. Now, the one thing I want to point out, all other programs remain. Your guided reading, your independent reading, all of your aspects of literacy, all your core lessons in mathematics, everything is the same. The only thing you're implementing is these, and with great care, is these 5 instructional stopgap resources to get the kiddos above that background curve to make sure that they can learn the information. Okay, so we've covered the introduction, the general academic program design to try to make our low SES school emulate a high SES school using these stopgap resources. But let's talk about something really, really important, and that's the systems. before we get to those stopgap resources, school-wide and classroom systems. Okay? After safety, because I always say this after safety, because the most important thing we do in any school is make sure that our children are safe. And once the kiddos are in a safe environment, safe haven, we're ready to start presenting an education and getting these kiddos the same educational equity as all kiddos across the country. So what's the most important things that we can do with school-wide systems and classroom systems? First and foremost is to preserve instructional minutes. When you lose 15 minutes a day, that equals 9 full school days by the end of the school year in a standard traditional public school year. 9 minutes for every 9 days. You lose 30 minutes a day, or a teacher loses 30 minutes a day, they're losing 18 days, a whole month. Essentially a whole month, because only 22 days. They're losing 45 minutes, it's multiples of 9. 27 school days are gone. And I have been in schools before, unfortunately, where the fact is I'm doing consulting work with them, and I see as much as an hour and a half gone in one day, and that's 54 school days. Those kiddos may show up to school all year, but they're only actually in school for about 6 months. The other 3 months, they've lost that time. So the most important thing is you preserve instructional minutes. How do we do that? Effective classroom management. We train our teachers, and I put a lot of time at the beginning of the year training teachers to make sure that they have strong classroom procedures set up. They use their teacher voice. They have very, very careful on seating issues, making sure kiddos are separated, making that would produce distractions. The administration helps deal with some of the issues as far as discipline. So the fact that marginal discipline issues, and all classrooms have them, don't turn into major discipline issues. The important thing here is being proactive. You got to teach it. We got to, as administrators, we have to instruct, train the teachers to be very effective classroom management experts. And this can be done. It's just putting the time forward where it's going to matter. The classroom systems, how you begin the day. Is there an academic focus? All right. Starting and closing a lesson, making sure that these things are structurally sound. What's the classroom physical environment look like? Is the teacher desk neat? Is the classroom neat? Are the kiddos' desks neat? Are the anchor supports? Are all items that are up on the wall? Are they all up on the wall with fact where they serve a functional purpose, that there's a reason for them up there? But setting up very high productive classrooms is key. Your early finishers on your daily routines. What are they going to do when the early finishers finish? Are they up walking around, or do they know exactly, specifically what they're supposed to do, so they're not disrupting class, or the fact that they're engaging their time in a useful manner? Are pencils sharpened? Bathroom procedures set up? Lining up standards all across the dorm. All of these things lead to effective classroom management, and that's what we have to train our teachers on, to have good classroom systems. Again, we're trying to preserve instructional minutes so that we don't lose classroom days. All right. The global school systems, the common areas, hallways, area, arrival, dismissal, all of these things have to be set up. When I do a consulting trip out, the first thing I do is I look at the principal's classroom. How is it going? I show, if the school opens up at 7 o'clock, I'm there at 7 a.m. I want to see what the principal's classroom looks like, how they've set up the routines for their teachers of picking up kids. What do the hallways look like? Because that's the principal classroom, making sure those things are being enforced, that there's good, solid instructional resources up on the hallway, bulletin boards, making sure that it's neat and it's the environment is fit. A lot of times I can walk into a school, and before I ever walk into a classroom, after looking at how the general systems work, of the kids arriving to school, how they go through the breakfast line, how the teachers are picked up, how clean the school is. You can look at the physical environment and realize before you ever walk into a classroom, you're going to see a problem. Remember, always the principals, the teachers were always modeling. So the principal's modeling what they want out of the teachers are modeling for the children. The classroom lessons, are they sequential? All right. Have they put time into the process where it makes sense to the kiddos, and it just moves to a very, very structured lesson plan? Is there an academic focus to the lesson, and is it being accountable? And we've moved to a canned style lesson plan where the fact is the teachers can just download a lesson plan or the district has written them. I'm not in favor of these. And I'm not in favor of these is because the teacher didn't write them and they haven't thought through them. So if there is a canned approach out of your district or it's required, that teacher should be required to actually rigorously go through that lesson ahead of time to make sure they understand all the hinge points and all the aspects of that and make sure the kiddos have the appropriate background knowledge where they're going to understand that lesson. But I've been always very careful with canned lessons, and I did not allow canned lessons at Graham. They had to write their own lesson plans for that very reason. The physical school environment, it has to be tidy and clean. Again, I've talked about this. Bulletin boards, academic, up to date, ready to roll. Malcolm Gladwell wrote a lot about the broken window effect, where the fact is that he used the New York subways as an example, where if they allowed graffiti to stay on the walls, or they had a broken window there and litter in these subways, that it continued, people disrespected it and continued to put more graffiti and litter and didn't treat it with respect. It's no different with our schools. There should never be a time where graffiti is left on a wall, our hallways or our classrooms are dirty. It just sends and conveys a message to children that, it's okay to put more paper on the floor. There is not pride in the school. So I was absolutely up to date. I'd walk in, I'd look at bulletin boards. I would catch a morning where I would have all the custodians walk the campus on every Monday and Thursday to make sure that our campus environment was clean, so that the kiddos would walk down the halls. They would not see any paper, any graffiti, anything on those walls. It promoted a source of pride for them to come to school, and that this is a place where learning is important. Now, the final note on systems: when we don't take these systems seriously, or they're poorly designed, or there's unkemptness in the school, you're just going to see student achievement will be depressed. Okay, great teachers and effective resources, they're just going to have a limited effect. Right? We're going to lose too much time in the classroom. And then you start having teacher turnover, and then students departing for charter schools or other schools. If you're a traditional public school, they're going to rise. And the parents are taking those kiddos to those charter schools because they're offering an alternative that is more hopeful than what they're seeing in the traditional public schools. And I've done a lot of work with charter schools, and I'm a huge charter school advocate for that reason. If the traditional public schools are not going to be able to put a high-level academic program for these kiddos, then the new public schools, with the charter schools, will fill that gap. And the traditional public schools, which been a part of my whole life from a child and to working in them, they have not proven that they can do right by these kiddos. It's the next step, which would be the charter schools. Okay, let's move on to the resources. And this is the point of the a large point of this particular webinar today, which is stopgap, which is to stop that gap, that achievement gap, work with skills and close it. I'm going to talk about the language arts and phonics, and then the numeracy, and then the AR, these 5 programs. Okay. First off, structured phonics. You can never get around structured phonics. All right, it should always be included. It's free. I used Saxon Phonics at Graham. Why? I use that because the fact is that any level of experienced teacher can run it. We had a high level of L's, English language learners, to school, up to 60%. I could easily monitor it with the way that we ran it and the fact that it fit that need. But we had gotten away from phonics back in the 80s and in the 90s, and we were losing kids on just the basic elements of the phonemic awareness and the basic phonics of the language. So I would advocate as one of these stopgaps a very structured phonics program. It can be a district program that you have, it can be a school program that you have. But the fact is usually that I can guarantee in the schools I've been in Texas, almost every single one of them has a structured phonics program now in place. The first stopgap program that I designed out of Graham was the Fluency Word program. All right, and this is one that you can, if you email me, I will be more than happy to send to you for free, and you can use it. And it's implemented from K through 6th grades. It's the first 1,000 words of the English language. Now, it gets kiddos reading, and you have to remember that a lot of our kiddos are coming to school, the Title I kiddos of any race. They're coming to school not owning a native academic language. And it doesn't matter if it's English, it doesn't matter if it's Spanish, it doesn't matter what the language is when they're coming to a Title I school. It's been shown that about 90% don't own an academic language, regardless of race. And Risley and Hart and Shank have written greatly on this particular aspect. And one of Risley and Hart's conclusions in their 2003-2004 research was that between 87% and 96% of the recorded words when they went into welfare homes and low-income homes, those kiddos emulated the words of their parents. So if their parents used, poor English, poor Spanish, or non-academic English, non-academic Spanish, so did the kids. But we're finding this in the schools of any race. It doesn't matter if the kiddo is white, doesn't matter if the kiddo is African American, doesn't matter if the kiddo is Hispanic, Asian. When they're coming into our Title I schools, they're behind in the vocabulary and the word game. This catches them up in a hurry, and it gives them the most basic fluency of the words. The next is the Accelerated Reader program, and this is a vendor product. Again, I don't work for Accelerated Reader, but we use their program. We implemented this from 1st to 6th grades, and it assures that all children are reading independently at home. And there's been a lot of research lately, and the research is absolutely 100% correct, that independent reading is the key. But I see many schools implementing independent reading without accountability. And that's a problem because they're not making sure the kiddos are reading. So what we did with the Accelerated Reader, because it covers every book in our library, and our library had a tremendous number of, I put Title I funds, at least $15,000 to $30,000 a year of the Title I funds. I stuck that money, or I allocated that money right into the library to make sure that we bought high-level, grade-level books, high-interest books for kiddos, and the fact that they were permabound books in this particular case that had hardcover helps a lot because they at least last 2 to 3 years, 4 years before we start having to weeding those books out. But we could absolutely, with just requiring the students at the end of the day, find out what books they were reading, all right, know what page they were on, a very quick 5-minute exercise at the end by the classroom teacher, monitor those kiddos of, okay, if the book's got so many pages in it, 5th grader was going to read 30 pages a night, independent reading, a 4th grader 25 straight down, a 3rd grader 20 straight down to 2nd grader 20 pages, and then a 1st grader 15 pages. We could track those kiddos, make sure that they were reading at home, and they would be taking a simple comprehension test where the kids were practicing at home. And again, this was an application of our phonics and our fluency program, so the kids were practicing what they were reading, which was huge. These programs, this Accelerated Reader program, is relatively inexpensive. It would cost between $3,000 and $4,000 a year. And then, we were able to be highly accountable with independent reading and make sure the kid was doing. Our 3 language arts, as far as reading, stopgap programs with the structured phonics, the fluency program, and the Accelerated Reader. Now, I wanted to mention here that at Graham, we had transitioned about the 2nd or the 3rd year into novel study programs. So I had started to allocate our Title I funds, not just with library books, but buying classroom novel sets. So we had an entire wall starting off, filled off with about $50,000 to $60,000 worth of classroom novel sets that I had made a grant, a symbiotic grant process with the local libraries in Austin, and they helped fund 90% of these novel sets. So the children all fall were reading in the language arts program. We're reading high-level, authentic novels, and there was nothing but to just absolutely just attract and engage a child than these great Roald Dahl novels. And the teachers were just loved teaching it, and you would see classroom discipline go way down. The teacher would be doing read alouds with the kiddos. And the kiddos, when they would join in with the teacher, you would see them, the kiddos starting to pick up some prosody of how the teacher was reading and how the author was presenting these novels. They would have reading-writing connections. But again, we could bring the kiddos along just by a simple accountability of independent reading using the Accelerated Reader program. So let's see what that actually produced. These are the Graham results. This is the 2 standardized tests at the top. I have to talk through this because you're looking at the same PowerPoint. You're looking at the TAKS and the STAR. Those are the two standardized tests. We changed the STAR in 2012. You can see from 2003 to 2011 on the bottom. On the x-axis, we were running the TAKS test, the standardized assessment, and then we moved in 2012 to the STAR assessment, the State of Texas Academic Readiness. And then on the vertical column, you can see the passing percentage and the commended rates. This is for reading. I took the school in 2008, and you can see that we came up only 82% to 87%, and our commended stayed about the same. It is very difficult to turn reading around in a year. It generally takes 2 years to 3 years, but you have to be very, very specific with what you're doing. And those structured programs that I just talked about, the 3 of the 5, helps tremendously. But you can look at what happens. All right. In 2009, all of a sudden we pop up to 98% passing at a school with, 94 at that time, 95% economically disadvantaged students with 97, 98% minority kiddos. All right. The commended rates come up from 18% to 28%. 2010, we're full gun with these. Our kiddos are coming up. They're all getting the joke. 96% passing with 48% commended. We're almost up to half of our children being commended. Again, we hang at 96%, 42% commended. In 2012, we went to the STAR. This was a much more difficult test, many more main idea questions, many more inference questions. They got rid of a lot of the detailed questions. They wanted to really, really promote high levels of rigor in reading. Our same kiddos are from 42% in 2011, we fell all the way to 18%. We dropped from 96% to 90%. Now that's a 6% drop, but we didn't know what to expect out of that particular reading test. They really hadn't, the state of Texas hadn't really released a lot, so we were really guessing on what they wanted at that time. But where we fell 6% with our particular systems using our stopgap resources, you saw schools dropping 30% and 35% in Texas. Because of the fact is they didn't have systems they could tweak easily. But as soon as we saw this is the level of rigor that now that the state expects on the STAR test in Texas, and STAR is very, very closely aligned to Common Core. They don't like to say that, but it definitely is when you look at the two standards. We climb right back up to 95%, continue on in high sustained rates up to 97%. And then all of a sudden in 2016, we fall to 89%. The data drops. There's got to be a reason why the data drops, and there is. In 2016, they started giving every special ed student, regardless of essentially their academic level, on grade level tests. So to qualify for special education services in Texas, you need to generally be about 2 years behind. So a fourth grader is generally reading on a second grade level, but the state of Texas decided to, that student would start taking a grade level fourth grade test. They wouldn't have a modified test anymore. And the only tests that were modified in special education, if there was a serious, cognitive, where the cognitive problem, where the kiddo had IQ ratios of certain levels, and they had to qualify for that. But at Graham, you're looking at maybe 3 kiddos, and we were a very large school, would qualify for that. So all of those other kiddos were taking grade level tests. All those other students receiving special education for the first time were taking grade level tests. So that represents that 97% drop to 89% drop. But the commended rates were still at 27, 25%. Were exceedingly high for a Title I school in the state of Texas. It's so high that you'll see that we were the top Title I school in 2015, according to the nonprofit organization Children at Risk. So the fourth program needed of the stopgap to stop that gap and then close it so the kids get the jokes. This is a non-negotiable word program. Again, the non-negotiable word program is very, very closely aligned, almost exactly aligned with the fluency program. Why? Because we're back to the hot dogs and hamburgers. We don't want our programs to compete. They need to have a symbiotic appeal with each other, symbiotic approach. Now, the first grade of the non-negotiables, and I'll send this to you if you're interested in this. You just have to email, and I'll give that email at the end of the presentation. The first grade's a little bit different program because the kiddos are just learning to read, and there's a lot of word families in there with cat, rat, fat, mat, and other issues. So that program's a little different, but the other second to sixth grade is the same, and it's the first 800 words of the English language. But it ensures that children coming from low-income homes can correctly spell words. Now, what's interesting about this is that when I first came to Graham, I went out and I tested our fourth graders. And in fourth grade in Texas is where we have our first writing assessment, a state standardized writing assessment. And I went through the first 100 words personally as a principal to see how many words those kiddos, I gave a spelling test for the first 100 words with each of those kiddos, each of those classrooms to see how many they could spell. 60% of my fourth grade, 60% of my fourth grade could not spell the word I, and, the most basic words. And as a lot of educators know, the last the last element that a child learns in literacy is how to write that language. So the fact is that those kiddos had not been moving through our system at Graham successfully to be able to spell those words correctly. So this program corrected that, and it was very easy to do. And you'll see with our results how effective it is. But what's interesting also about when you're looking at a non-negotiable word program, it actually starts that symbiotic interplay with the fluency program because those words are basically the same. The fluency program is 1,000 words, where the non-negotiable word is 800 words. So the fact is that the kiddos, after being able to say the most basic words, and if you look at the basic fluency in general, our fluency program of 1,000 words by third grade will cover approximately 90% of the words in the English language. So that's what these kiddos are seeing on their assessments, and they're able to be very, very successful at that grade level because that's what the grade levels require. So, and the non-negotiables is designed so that the children arrive in fourth grade capable of spelling all these words correctly, and that they are able to handle the standardized assessment in fourth grade very successfully. Plus, the teacher's time is not devoted solely to writing. You'll see this a lot on a standalone test where the teachers spend a tremendous amount of time only on the fourth grade writing test. But it provides the building blocks of success for children to write a solid composition and then just learn revising and editing efficiently. But again, in this process, I strongly recommend just a standard 4 to 5 paragraph format, a beginning, middle, end, with some details in the middle, and we'll be able to finish that up. Moving along to the Graham Star results on writing, as you can see, consistency across the board. All right, we fell in 2013. That's my fault. I put a new teacher that was a superstar down on my primary grade up to fourth grade, and I did not give her that kind of support, and she struggled greatly in there, and that was definitely my fault. But she rebounded, and I admitted my error of not supporting her. Again, as you see, our results are phenomenal in writing. Again, you look at 2016, we fell all the way 87%. Again, that was our children of special needs having to take grade level writing tests, and they didn't perform as well as we'd like. Actually, when you look at 87%, we only lost one regular education kiddo in that entire process, and then we lost a tremendous number of special education kiddos where we started a different program this year trying to adapt to that need. Okay, the last is a numerical fluency program of the stopgap programs. You got to be able to take math off the table. So we implemented this program. It runs from first grade. It goes to sixth grade. We only had a fifth grade at Graham. But it ensures that children possess both math facts and a comprehensive arithmetic skill for all grades in third through sixth. But we also have the primary grades in first and second running, which then ensures that children are on grade level skill-wise when they get to third. Again, this is a vendor product. I can't give this to you. I don't own Formative Loop. It's relatively inexpensive, $1K to $4K per year, just like a cell-rated reader. It's a web-based program that we use, and we've been using it for a very, very long time, very successfully. But as a principal, I can monitor all classrooms based on skill performance, daily, real time, whenever I want to do it. The kiddos must have the skill facts to problem solve. So when you find that many tests in Texas is, for example, is a 4-hour test, it's time, the kiddos have to be very, very computationally fluent, and they've also included models. The program is comprehensive, it's universal, it's able to to accomplish all these things with a 5-minute daily assessment. Believe it or not, 5 minutes and they're done. But it's a verification of mastery process for the skills. I can go and check any kiddo and drill down to any kiddo in the school, find out where they're at. A computer lab is not needed. It's just a daily assessment that we ran that is on paper. It's differentiated. All the kiddos can be on different skills. It handles any number of kiddos at the school. It helps support the teachers, so we're able to get all data on the kiddos. We can track any kiddo who's fallen behind, help those kiddos out. And without a doubt, math can be turned around in 1 year as the easiest fix if you run a structured numeracy program. Last note on this, all right, a separate program solving instructional resource for the application. I strongly recommend this, that one that promotes grade level rigor so the kiddos can see what's coming up in the fall and in the spring. In fact, it's a daily exercise, daily diet of 3 to 7 word problems so the kiddos can see applications to this skill-based numeracy that they're learning, and then the core lessons. But this is, you get these either vendor or district supplied. But the fact is that there's a slew of them out there across the country that are very, very good at accomplishing this fact. But that numeracy program, which is our 5th stopgap program, it gets those kiddos, it transforms those kiddos above that, lower that background knowledge, catches them up very, very quickly, and they're good to go on problem solving. Okay, mathematics at Graham came down in 2008, put that numeracy program in place, and you see, we jumped from 67% in 2007 up to 91% in 2008. 1 year out, same kiddos. But our committed rates went from 16% in 2007 to 41%. And then you see sustained mathematic performance across the board, regardless if we're using TAKS or STAR, with high numbers of kids being both commended and meeting, passing minimum standards in Texas, which is amazing because you have to remember, we are looking from 2000, the 7-8 school year, all the way to 2016. We've had many changes in personnel, but our numeracy program and our stopgap programs are able to have our new personnel come in, ready-made, be successful with the efficacy of those programs, and be able to produce at very high levels as if they were a veteran teacher. So again, it's those 5 stopgaps that are easy to run and make a big difference in your Title I school. Okay, I throw science in here. As you can see, science, we test in 5th grade in Texas. Again, the very first year in 2008, I never got around to it. There was so many problems at the school. It was my first year there. I focused on writing, reading, and mathematics. And then in 2000, in the very second year, I put my time into the science. Easy fix. The kids could read on grade level. You can see that in 2009, we'd pop up to 92%, stay at high levels all the way across, high commended rates in science. The kiddos can, again, easily apply the scientific concepts when they can read on grade level, and they can do math on grade level. We only dropped down below 90% in 2012, 87%, because we went with the new testing format that we were unfamiliar with, and then we've had some exposure to that and adapted our processes to know what the new state level rigors were on those areas. Science is a very easy subject matter once the kiddos are at grade level in math and reading, which can be done very easily with these stopgap resources. Again, I want to show you this one element to process a whole bunch of points. What you're looking at is a school digger dot graph here of school year on the bottom and the percent on the side. But what we're comparing Graham Elementary compared to every Texas elementary school in the state of Texas. So when I took the school in 2007, you can look down and you can see that we're in the bottom 10%, about 8%. With these stopgap resources of those 5 programs, we radically shot all the way up quickly into the top 80, 85%. And as we get better at those programs, as we implement them, we put the time, we put the work in, and you can see us keep climbing until we're in the top 4% of all elementary schools in Texas, regardless of the school enrollment and the school socioeconomics. And in 2015, Texas was ranked the top Title I school in the state. Remember, you can submit questions, please, and then we'll answer those. We're almost done with the presentation. Okay, last, let's deal with personnel. Okay, now this is a surprising element when I present on this or I go to schools. All the folks think that the first thing we got to deal with is teachers, and the teachers are exceedingly important. There is no doubt about it. But a teacher is going to find, no matter who it is, Madeline Hunter, you, me, doesn't matter who it is going to have a tremendous amount of time when they're standing in front of a classroom with kids with skill gaps all over the place, and they're not getting the joke. So you can have very, very good teachers up in front of the classroom, but when the kiddos have all of these skill gaps, the entire curriculum was non sequitur to them. So we have to be able to get those stopgap resources in place to be able to get the kiddos back up to speed so the teachers are effective with their time up there. But let's look at what we need in solid teachers at what I've been hiring for the last 10 years as a principal, and then a couple of years before that as an assistant principal. But the attributes, we need analytically cognitive teachers, and they're out there. When they come in, we need folks that are very good thinkers. They must have a high work ethic. You can't come into these schools and not thinking that you're going to be, that the work isn't there. The work has to come to be able to turn this around. No computer program is going to turn kids around. Humans will. That you find teachers are trying to make a difference with their life. You're looking for teachers that are out there looking for social contributions. A huge, the gold mine of teachers out there are these alternative certified teaching candidates. They're coming out of our elementary or out of our universities. They're Plan 2 liberal arts, English degrees, very mature adults, and they're unable to find these jobs in their field when they get English degrees and social sciences degrees, but they're very, very smart, want to make a difference. And with the economy the way it's gone for the last 10 years, where it's gotten very, very competitive to find professional jobs, these folks are out there. They're coming through the alternative certified ranks, and hiring those folks has just been a boon for the schools. In Texas and a lot of the schools that I've dealt with, a couple of schools in Michigan, they need bilingual teachers, so you need certifications. So those teachers are out there too, and I find these same attributes with these particular bilingually certified teachers. The one thing I want to point out, though, is you got to hire, I always recommend hiring teachers who can be coached and led to success. They got to be team-oriented. It's very difficult with having 60, 70 teachers that I had at Graham to be able to hire in teachers that wanted to be rogues. That we have to be working as a team here, the fewest number of moving parts possible. And so if a teacher came in and they were a strong candidate, but they were going to be a rogue to me, they were going to run on their own, and they weren't going to be working with the school, putting these stopgap resources to be able to correct these problems with these kiddos. I mean, I passed on them, but that's a decision that every principal has to make. I also, as it went on, when it went on, that Graham started doing very well, we were able to get very, selective on who we wanted to hire, because again, when the results start going up and people start learning it's a very, very effective place to work, you start getting, teachers of 2 to 3 years experience beyond entry level coming into you and looking for a different experience. And so those are an option for you as well. But what you want is just out of those teachers is to know that their basic teaching aspects, and then adapt to a very successful approach so that these kiddos can be successful in school and receive an equitable education. Okay, personnel, administrators, specialists. Administrators, you're supporting the teachers, helping with discipline, out there teaching in the classroom, because you've been very successful as classroom teachers. You've moved into the administrative ranks. You're leading the way. All right, you're monitoring the fluency and the non-negotiables and the accelerated reader, making sure these programs are being done, these stop gaps, because that's what's making the big difference. That's what's getting you the big bang for the buck. So you got to make sure those things are going. The administrators are also, they're implementing and spending time on resources that matter and that yield results. They don't get bogged down on the latest fad coming out. They're sticking with something that they know is very successful and is showing success for them. Your instructional specialists are working with those kiddos below that curve. Your volunteers are helping with those folks, those kiddos that are below that background line, bringing them up into the with the rest of the kiddos so that everybody's successful. And at Graham, your office clerks, your counselors, they supported the numeracy. So when the kiddos would take their 5-minute assessment on pencil paper, that we would each person, I would correct 2, 3 third grade classrooms. I could finish that stuff very, very quickly. Enter it into the computer, pops out as far as the next differentiated assessments for the next day, and the homework comes right out on the copier. Pin it in there, do my interventions as needed, and our counselors and our office clerks and our volunteers were doing that as well. So this whole program is being supported across the school. And again, the teachers were very, very appreciative of that level of support, and it took very little time in the day. I probably spent 30 minutes on numeracy in the day, helping out, running interventions in my 3 third grade classrooms out of the 7 third grade teachers I had there. My AP took another couple of the third grade kiddos. You get in with, you're bonding with the kids, you're helping kiddos out, you're helping the teachers out, and you provide a very, very viable, supportive work environment. Okay, so what do these systems produce and over time? And then we have some QA. All right, they have high student performance in the middle schools. When they're leaving fifth grade, now they're on grade level. Now you're giving your next middle school a lot that they can work with. The fact is that they're getting kiddos that read on grade level, do math on grade level, understand science on grade level, and can write on grade level, coming out of the Title I schools. All right. Once that you have the kiddos up, you can explore fine arts curriculum, choirs. We did all these creative learning opportunities. Blackshear Elementary, after 2 years, had some of the highest academics with Graham and the Austin Independent School District. They just went right in it, and they got creative, and they started the first elementary fine arts academy. So you can move into that. Technologically applications with stopgap animations and what have you. There are many things that can be done once your school is up and running. But these are the 5 programs that once underway absolutely will have a high-performing Title I school, and then it allows massive creativity at the school to take place. Your problem-solving resources for students afford appropriate grade level rigor, so you can make sure the kiddos are seeing what is expected of them by year's end as far as grade level requirements. Your classroom lessons are efficiently run. They're skill-based lessons with accountability. But it's just a matter of you taking the time, putting in the efforts that matter, and you start to see tremendous results within the Title I schools that emulate a high SES school, because that's all you're doing to fix. You're just doing a quick fix to get the kiddos in there. They're smart. They just need resources that are effective. We've seen this at school after school that we work with, and I was hoping that, offering these 3 literacy programs that you can email me at the email bahelwig@gmail.com. I'll send them to you. You can take a look at them. You can see how they fit in. And any other questions, you can definitely just email, and I will take care of that. But we'll see if we can handle some of the questions at this time. Okay. Accelerated Reader. The other 2 that the companies that I don't own, obviously, are Accelerated Reader. Call them up, see what they can offer you, and then see how you can, and email me if you have any questions. But that's a great process, because they've got every book in your library able to have a comprehension check. The Formative Loop numeracy program, they offer free trials for 4 months. You can test that out to see if it's viable for your campus. But I'm thinking that both of these companies offer products that are high level quality that I can guarantee that I've used for a decade.
First question: what are your thoughts on a project inquiry hands-on approach to teaching and learning?
I think, okay, I'm going to equate this question here. One of the questions came in is my thoughts on a project inquiry hands-on approach to teaching and learning. You always want to have a hands-on, a tactile approach how you start these in any particular field. If you're going to deal with fractions, the kiddo still needs to start with the most basic tactile manipulative. This whole process of going to expanding and starting, like, say, you see project-based management coming in, project-based learning coming in, problem-based learning and solving happening. Those are good programs if and only if they've supported the fundamentals. And so if the fundamentals are there, the kids can apply the problem, because you're talking about an application in those particular issues. So the kiddos have to have the same numeracy fundamentals, the same language fundamentals that you see out of these stopgaps to be able to use those effectively, especially in Title I schools. I would just caution anybody on that to make sure that they're not giving something that's above the kiddos and they haven't filled in those gaps, and the kiddos then struggle mightily with the with standardized tests that are grade level assessments because they haven't filled those gaps. I got some more questions here, but I'm going to answer those in an email. So please, if you have any questions, please email them. And then if you would like the language arts stopgap resources that are offered, or if you're in Texas, the science preps, please email, and we'll take them from there. Thank you, and I appreciate you tuning in today.